Hi everyone, welcome back to Talks in Class. I'm Jenna and I'm so glad that you're joining me today. Thank you for being here. It's been another week full of adventures over here. Or I guess not really adventures exactly, but we have started on our list of fall activities. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. I don't know why I always think that things will calm down once summer's over and fall comes. I always think, cozy season, less activity, I'll be able to relax, because summer always feels just so busy and so jam-packed with events and activities. But in reality, it always ends up being, a week or two of calm where we don't have much going on, and then things get busier than ever. So we have started on that part of fall where we have something basically scheduled every single weekend. But it's been fun. This past weekend we went to Universal Studios here in LA, and we've never been. And actually, I think this was my first time at any sort of theme park in, years. I can't remember the last time I've been to a proper theme park. It's been a really long time. And we weren't planning on doing Universal anytime soon. It wasn't really on our list. We thought about maybe doing a Halloween Horror Night, but just going to Universal wasn't really on our radar. But somebody who used to work for Universal happened to have a couple of passes that were going to expire, and they wouldn't be able to use them. So they very generously offered them to us, because they were going to expire anyway. So we were like, okay, why not? We knew we'd go eventually, so we figured, why not? And we had such a good time. It was so fun. I love doing touristy stuff in the city where I live. We used to do this kind of stuff in New York all the time, and I always recommend it to people. It's fun, and the cheesier, the better. So as always, I will start this episode with my what good happened for this week. Honestly, the past couple of weeks have not been the best, especially work-wise. Things just don't always go perfectly with any type of work. And with social media work, there are just a unique set of challenges that come with it, just like any other line of work, I've just been dealing with a few different things that have been kind of frustrating, but there's this one big issue that I have not been able to fix, and it's been stressing me out, kind of driving me crazy. It's kind of a long, pretty uninteresting story, but basically what it boils down to is a technical issue that I just cannot figure out. And I felt like I had tried every avenue that I could think of to fix this, and nothing was working, and it impacts my work. It's not just an annoyance or an inconvenience. I actually do need this issue to be solved and fixed. And finally, late last week, I was able to get in touch with someone who I think can actually help me fix it. And it's not fixed yet, but I have hope. I just felt like this massive relief being able to know that there's somebody out there who gets it, because I don't. Fingers crossed that gets resolved soon. And also, here's your sign that if you're dealing with a problem that you cannot seem to solve, it's well worth it to try to find somebody who can solve it. Because sometimes we just need other people to help with things, and that's okay. So today's topic was somewhat inspired by my very successful thrift haul a couple weekends ago, when I found a few old magazines. I found some Rolling Stone magazines from the 90s and the early 2000s, as well as an Allure magazine from 2007 with Britney Spears on the cover. It got me thinking, just by how excited that I was to find those in 2023, about what an important form of entertainment and also just an important source of information magazines were when I was young. So today, let's dive into one of my favorite physical mediums, magazines from the 90s and 2000s. Before we jump into this week's episode, I want to share another quick tip for those of you who use the Jenna Barclay Style Box, my clothing rental service, and that is to use the hold and prioritize options in your virtual closet to help ensure that you get items sent to you that you are actually ready to wear right now. So when you add items to your closet, the system will select from everything in your closet those items to send to you based on availability and also which items you prioritize. So first is that prioritize option. It is exactly what it sounds like. It's marking items as your priorities, or kind of your top picks in your closet for right now. I use this to mark items that if I had them at home, I would wear them right now, today. So if it's summer, I'm prioritizing things like skirts, sundresses, tank tops, short sleeves. And although I might have some lighter weight long sleeves or jeans in my closet, for example, I'm probably not prioritizing those things unless, for example, I'm really in need of jeans right now. When you mark something as priority, the system will select from those items first. So there's a good chance that you'll get those items over the other items in your closet that are not marked as priority. And then there's the hold option. I'm not sure everybody knows about this, but this is a great way to basically save an item to add to your closet later. When things are on hold, the system will not send them to you until you move them from hold back into your actual closet. So I use this for things that I'm not ready to wear right now, but I might want later. Mostly I use this for things that either aren't seasonally appropriate just yet. So right now I'm adding a bunch of sweaters to my closet, but it's hot outside. So I'm putting all of those on hold. So I won't actually have them sent to me yet. Or dressier items that I don't need in my day-to-day life, but I might want to add to my closet during a holiday season or a time when I just have events and things like that happening more frequently. Using these options can really help personalize your rental experience and maximize the use that you're getting out of each item that you rent, which is obviously the goal. If you haven't tried the Style Box and you'd like to try it out, you can try it completely free for your first month. Just visit jennabarclaystylebox.com and click Get Started. That first month free will automatically be applied. When I think about things that I miss the most about my teen years in the 2000s, most of the things that come to mind are things that relate to the ways that life has changed with the evolution of technology. I miss driving to the mall and shopping in real life or just hanging out there with my friends. I miss burning a mix CD with a bunch of different totally random songs on it, decorating it with a Sharpie, and then giving it to my friend to listen to. I miss taking pictures with the disposable camera at someone's house on a Friday night and having absolutely no idea what those pictures looked like until, I don't know, a month later when I finally got the film developed. And I also miss the acceptance or even appreciation of the imperfect pictures that we would inevitably get from those disposable cameras because we only had one shot to take that selfie and we didn't know what it looked like. So we had to live with whatever that result was. And I really, really miss magazines. Magazines are one of the things that I miss the most from my teen years in the 2000s. And I'm not really sure why that is. Maybe it's because I really loved following fashion so much as a teenager, or just because I've always been very drawn to visual things. I was obsessed with Pinterest when it came out and Tumblr in the 2010s and then Instagram. I love a visual medium. Or maybe because as a tween in the late 90s, magazines were the first taste that I feel like I had of kind of feeling like a teenager. I remember convincing my dad, of all people, my dad. If you knew my parents, this is hilarious because my dad was pretty strict and my mom was not. But somehow I convinced my dad, not my mom, to buy me an issue of 17 magazine when I was 11 years old. I still remember this specific issue, you guys. It's from 1998. Danielle Fishel's on the cover, aka Topanga from Boy Meets World. She looked absolutely perfect, like just the picture of a 90s cool girl, you know what I mean? So we're at the grocery store, my dad and I, Hy-Vee probably, and my dad asked if I wanted one of the magazines at the checkout because he probably was like, I don't know how to entertain this 11-year-old girl. Like, she doesn't like anything that kids like anymore. Like, what do I do with her? So he asked if I wanted a magazine at the checkout, and he probably meant like, you know, Tiger Beat or whatever, something with the Spice Girls on the cover. But I remember thinking to myself, this is my shot. This is my chance to get the 17. So I grabbed that 17 and I probably told him some story about how I loved Boy Meets World and this girl's on the show and I wanted to read the article to see what she says about the show. But whatever I said, it worked. And he bought me the 17 magazine. I literally can still remember 25 years later sitting on the couch in my dad's living room reading that magazine. I read it cover to cover so many times, and it was like looking into the lives of the cool older girls who I saw getting out of their cars at the high school every single day. You know, I felt so cool and grown up having that magazine. And I had other kind of girls, tween magazines before, but 17 always felt very grown up to me, probably because of the actual title of the magazine was 17 and I was 11 years old. Like, that's a big gap. I think the first teen-ish magazine that I had or ever got was this magazine called All About You in the late 90s. I had forgotten all about this magazine, completely left my mind until last summer when I found a stack of old magazines in my mom's garage, and there's a couple of issues of this magazine in there, and when I saw them, it all came back right away. There's this one issue from, I think, also 1998. Katie Holmes is on the cover. I must have read that cover to cover 100 times. Every single page has writing on it, little doodles on it, little comments, and even looking back at it, you know, after forgetting that the magazine even existed, all of those pages were like burned somewhere deep into my brain. I just remembered it so vividly. And then I remember getting into Teen magazine, like the actual magazine called Teen, and YM. YM was always my favorite. I don't really know why. I feel like they had fun segments. They had the embarrassing stories, which were always so good, and the advice columns. I loved reading all of those. I did have a subscription to 17 in high school. I always really liked 17. And of course, before I got into the teen lifestyle magazines, there were the teen celebrity magazines. You know the ones like Tiger Beat and Teen Beat and Bop that were basically just a magazine full of posters that you could tear out and hang on your walls. There was an entire genre of these magazines for thirsty little tween girls that were just full of pictures of, I don't know, Jonathan Taylor Thomas and Hanson and Leonardo DiCaprio. Basically anybody with the butt crack haircut, we swooned over them, and we needed to buy magazines just full of them. I remember going to the magazine aisle. Remember when stores had a magazine aisle? I would go to the magazine aisle in Target or Kmart or wherever we were shopping, and they would have a whole section of just these types of magazines. I mean, there were probably close to 10 different unique publications that were all essentially the exact same thing, and it was just fold out posters of the Backstreet Boys and Leonardo DiCaprio for us to hang on our walls. But personally, I started buying these magazines for two very specific reasons: the Spice Girls and Andrew Keegan. I always say that Devon Sawa, specifically Devon Sawa as Junior in Little Giants, was my first celebrity crush, but really I think it might have been Andrew Keegan in the 1994 classic film Camp Nowhere. Little Giants was also 1994. I looked this up to confirm, so it's a close call in which came first, but Camp Nowhere is such a memorable movie for me. I really was obsessed with this movie, you guys. If you have not seen Camp Nowhere, I really beg you to watch it, especially if you're a millennial. You will appreciate it so much. I need to do an episode all about 90s movies because I swear we really had the best movies when we were kids. They were so good. Camp Nowhere is about a group of kids who don't want to go to the lame summer camps that their parents want to send them to, like computer camp and fat camp. I kid you not, one of the girls is supposed to go to fat camp and she is maybe a size 6, I swear to God. The 90s were absolutely wild. But anyway, these kids create a fake camp at an abandoned hippie commune somewhere and convince this old drama teacher, played by none other than Christopher Lloyd, to pose as the camp director in order to trick all of their parents so that they can have a summer of swimming in the lake and, I don't know, just shenanigans. In it, a young Andrew Keegan plays the bad boy with a soft side who gives kids swirlies at school. What a 90s concept, actually. I wonder if kids these days even know what a swirly is. If you're a kid and you're listening, please advise. Do you understand what a swirly is? Anyway, Andrew Keegan, bad boy with a soft side, he's supposed to go to military camp, and his name is Zach. I mean, Zach is just a 90s hot boy name. So I loved this movie as a kid, and I loved Andrew Keegan in it. I had so many pictures of him from those teen magazines on my walls, and I feel like I liked him especially because he wasn't the cliche, popular, like, celebrity boy for everybody to like. I mean, for one thing, he didn't have blonde hair, so that already set him apart. So I guess I was a little bit of a hipster about my celebrity crushes as a kid. But anyway, the moral of the story is you need to watch Camp Nowhere. One of my favorite things to do back in the day with stuff from any magazine really regardless of the type of magazine, but especially the ones with those teen celebrity heartthrobs, was to cut out all of the pictures and then make collages for my wall according to theme. So instead of just, covering a whole wall with random stuff, I would either take a poster board or I would cover one specific area of my wall, like the back of my door or my closet door or whatever, with a theme. So there would be a Spice Girls collage or a Leo collage or a boy band collage or whatever it was. In middle school and early high school, I went through a phase of cutting out ads. I was obsessed with ads and I wanted to hang all of these ads from magazines all over my walls. And there was this one point where I had this one wall of my room completely tiled with just ads, advertising from magazines, like wallpaper of my bedroom. My favorites were like Roxy ads, Billabong, any surf brand, anything that kind of had that aesthetic to it. Also, this is a really vivid memory. Nike had this ad campaign in the year 2000 for the Air Presto shoes. I looked this up because I couldn't obviously remember what shoe it was for, but I remember the ad so vividly. Each ad showed a different colorway of the shoes, and it had this cool color blocked background. So there were 2 blocks of color and one had the shoe in it. And then the other color block had a like funky graphic that was related to the colorway, and they all had these like weird names. Like there was one shoe that was a blue color and it was called Abominable Snowman. So it had the shoe with like a little graphic of the Abominable Snowman, or there would be like a red colorway shoe with a graphic of a red hot sausage. They were very quirky. I remember there was one that had a little Buddha graphic, and they felt very modern and minimalistic, the way that kind of all branding is now and just is normal to see now. But at the time it felt very novel, and I remember thinking they looked really cool and kind of futuristic, and I loved these and I had them all over my walls. I remember hanging one in my locker in middle school. I thought they were so cool. I actually still have one magazine collage that I made sometime in high school, and I found it in a bin of old pictures. It has a whole bunch of images from ads and then maybe a couple small photos from like the Editorial Fashion shoot of the magazine, and then just a bunch of words. I liked to cut out words from magazines and put them either on physical photographs of my friends, so there'd be like a picture of my friends and I at a party, and I would cut out a headline from a magazine article that's like Confessions of a Teenage Party Girl and like tape it on the picture of my friends and I at some boring birthday party somewhere. We also would make these very elaborate collages to cover our binders for school. Like we would get the clear binders that you could slide the piece of paper in. You'd make a collage and then decorate your binder. It was an art form, really. We loved a collage. And I think about this all the time in terms of a lot of different memories, but we were just so easily entertained back then in the 90s and the 2000s. I could spend hours just reading a magazine, actually focusing on that magazine while listening to a CD all the way through, start to finish, one band, one musical artist, just on my little boombox in the corner. I'd read the advice columns and think about what I would do in that situation. I loved to do this. Or I would discuss with my friends what we would do. We'd call each other and read the advice columns and be like, well, what would you do? Because I disagree with this. I'd read the embarrassing stories. Obviously, we had to take all the quizzes. The quizzes were a very, very important part of the magazine experience, especially in late elementary and middle school years, the tween years. The quizzes really were the highlight of the magazine, I would say. We all used to change our answers to try to get the result we wanted. Like we would either take the quiz all the way through and realize it wasn't going the way that we wanted and backtrack and change our answers, or a lot of them just had a very easy to figure out pattern. Like if you answered mostly A's, you got this, mostly B's, mostly C's. So you'd read the possible results first and try to determine which one was the cool result and then choose your answers to the questions accordingly. I mean, what even was the point of that if the quizzes were that easy to hack? And we all did this, by the way. I also loved the horoscopes in magazines. I don't know if this was just me, but the horoscopes were one of the first things that I flipped to when I got a new magazine. I would go straight to the back and read what the 17 magazine astrologer thought was going to happen to me, specifically me, based on what they wrote about Aries in their teen magazine horoscope section. The 90s, I feel like, in general, had a big astrology boom though, which totally makes sense considering how much 60s influence there was on pop culture and trends in the 90s. But I think that is what cemented astrology as being a permanent core personality trait for me. I will unironically ask someone what their moon sign is when talking to them. And I think that this can be directly traced back to my obsession with checking horoscopes in teen magazines to find out whether or not my crush liked me back, and owning a glittery Aries necklace on a little ball chain from Claire's in 1997. And then of course there was the heart of the magazine, whatever it was in that particular issue, the celebrity cover story. Sometimes you'd even get a fold out poster along with the cover story. I have a couple of really great YM issues from the early 2000s with boy band covers with the fold out posters intact. I think I got these magazines probably just a little bit after my full boy band obsession, which I would say peaked in around 1999. And these issues are from 2000, so that makes sense. So I didn't actually take the posters out and hang them on my walls. They are intact in the magazines. And I think I actually have one with the Backstreet Boys, one with NSYNC, and one with 98 Degrees. So I have the trifecta of boy band YM covers from the year 2000. And then there was always a really great editorial fashion spread in all of these magazines. I never was so into the editorial spreads. It wasn't my favorite part because, that's not what real people were wearing. So it wasn't necessarily that interesting for me to look at. I've talked about this before, but I really loved seeing what real people were wearing, especially just in other places, other cities, other states, other types of kids. I like to see what people were wearing out in real life. So I loved when magazines would do features on real teens, which I feel like a lot of these magazines did pretty often in different kind of angles. They would do a real teen feature about their bedroom or their dorm room. Those were cool. Or about their clothes. I remember one magazine, and I don't know what magazine it is, but I have it. It has all of these different cities, and it had street style photos of teenagers in different cities to kind of show what the fashion trends were like in different cities. I loved stuff like that. Or when they would do a makeover on a real teenager somewhere, and you could kind of get a feel for ideas that you could actually use and steal. But of course, I also loved looking at celebrity outfits, and Teen People, I think, really was the best of the best for looking at things like celebrity outfits in real life, not like a red carpet or an editorial celebrity outfit, but like the paparazzi pictures of some celebrity just trying to get their Starbucks. And Teen People is one of my favorites for nostalgia now for this exact reason, because looking back, a lot of the editorial fashion magazines, it really doesn't look that dated because again, it's just not a reflection of what people were wearing in real life. And it looks so styled in general that, it looked ridiculous in 2005 just as much as it does now. But when I look back at Teen People and see those paparazzi photos of these celebrities just walking down the street, that's where you can really see the real trends of the time. And especially celebrities, because they were kind of setting the trends for all of us little teenagers in middle America who are watching their every move and trying to recreate their fabulous outfits from our local mall. And we really did get so much fashion inspiration from magazines because that's what we had. We had magazines, we had the mall, and we had MTV. We didn't have social media. We didn't have fashion influencers other than people we knew in real life whose fashion sense we might have liked. So magazines really had such a major impact on my fashion sense. But, especially those features that they would do on real people. I got a lot of ideas that I pulled directly from those. And I love looking at that stuff now just as much as I loved it then. And of course, we can't forget about the other stuff you could get with magazines. Sometimes there was stuff inside magazines, or there were little extras that you could get with your subscription. I'm pretty sure I actually started getting the Delia's catalog this way because it came along with some magazine subscription that I got. So if you subscribed to whatever magazine it was, you also got subscribed to these catalogs, and they would just start showing up at your house. I don't know, it might not have been Delia's. It could have been Alloy or Girlfriends LA. There were so many of those types of catalogs back then. Some magazines like 17 would have these special issues like 17's prom edition, or they would have these little guides that would come inside the magazine. So it was almost like a mini magazine inside the magazine, and it would be like, guide to new hair trends for fall 2002, and it would come inside your regular issue of the magazine. You really knew you were in for a treat when your magazine came wrapped in the plastic, because that probably meant there was something inside that the magazine people didn't want to get lost in the mail. A special guide, perhaps, or maybe a CD-ROM offering you 200 free hours of AOL. I hoarded those AOL discs, you guys, and I swear that is how I used AOL for like a year probably before I convinced my mom to actually sign up for it and pay the ridiculous monthly fee. I just used those free trial discs one after the next. And sometimes they'd send you CDs so you could trial like a computer game. I remember those were really cool too, and that was always a very special treat. There was just all kinds of cool stuff that you could get in those magazines at the time. I just bought an issue of Allure magazine from 2007 with Britney Spears on the cover at a record store this past weekend, and it is in pristine condition. Like, it looks almost as if it might have never even been opened. It looks brand new, and it is full of samples, and they're all, in perfect condition because it looks so brand new. We all remember the perfume samples, obviously, the ones where you'd unfold the edge of the page and smell the scent. But this one has a little sample packet of a Smashbox primer, like there's cosmetics in there, lip gloss, all kinds of stuff. I have one magazine from a bit earlier, probably early 2000s, that has a whole individually wrapped clean and clear face wipe that you could peel off the page and actually use. So you understand why it was so exciting to get these magazines. It was the highlight of my month when a new magazine would come in the mail. I'd get home from school and I'd always check the mailbox first thing because back then we got stuff in the actual mail other than junk. So, there might be something exciting in there. If there was a magazine in there, though, it really made my day. That was the best possible thing. So if there was a magazine, I'd take it inside and I'd turn on TRL or whatever, and I'd grab an M&M's Kudos bar from the kitchen and immediately start flipping through that magazine. I'd read it cover to cover. I'd smell the perfume samples. I'd set aside any AOL trial discs for safekeeping for when I needed them. I'd fold down, the corners of the pages for the articles I wanted to read again, or quizzes I wanted to take with my friends, or outfits I wanted to try to track down because, back then we couldn't just click the link. We had to read the fine print in the magazine and then try to figure out if we could afford that item. And if we could afford the item, what stores might carry it. And then we had to probably call on the phone a few different stores to try to find that. It was a whole thing. So you'd have to dog ear the pages so that you could go back and do that legwork later. And then once we were done reading the magazine, we'd give our magazine a whole new life by cutting them to shreds to decorate our bedroom walls or our notebooks or our lockers or anything that needed decorating. What do kids use now to decorate their bedroom walls now that print things and just a physical media in general isn't really a thing anymore? Or are their bedrooms just like aesthetic? Are they sad beige like everything else on the internet? I kind of don't want to know, actually, because that would be very tragic. And there's also just something about holding a physical magazine in your hands, flipping through a magazine, folding down those pages. It's not the same thing as scrolling on social media or pinning something on Pinterest or saving an Instagram post or whatever. It brought me so much joy to look through those magazines, and I still love them, And I also loved how there was a magazine for every phase or every niche of childhood. There was like children magazines, there were sports magazines, there were tween magazines, there were teen magazines, there were teen special interest magazines. There was something for everybody at every phase of their childhood through, adulthood in a magazine form. So I'm going to wrap this up by sharing a slightly different list this time. This is my top choice for 5 different phases and or categories of print publications in the 90s and early 2000s. The first category is teen magazine, my favorite teen magazine, and this one has to go to YM. There were so many good teen magazines back then. There's the big ones, YM, 17, Teen, Cosmo Girl, but then there were kind of lesser known ones like the magazine Jump. I really liked Jump. There was Twist, which I don't even remember much about. I just remember what the font looked like on the cover. But YM always was my favorite. YM is the one that I remember most vividly. So I think that means I read it the most. And it's also the one that when I look back at pictures taken in my old bedrooms, I had the covers all over my walls, which tells me that they probably had the best covers because they're the ones that I chose to hang up on my walls. And that is important. Number two, second category is celebrity magazine, and that has to go to teen people. One thing about me that's important is I am not big on celebrity gossip, so I was never really into like the Us Weekly and regular people that kind of focused on telling us what celebrities were doing in their personal lives. I really didn't care all that much. What I did care about is what they were wearing, and teen people did that really, really well. A little bit later, I remember reading People Style Watch, that's what it was called. And I loved that one too, because that was essentially everything that I wanted in a magazine. It was a magazine about what celebrities were wearing. And I don't know when that came out, but I unfortunately didn't discover it until probably the late 2000s. And that was amazing. The other thing though that I will say about Teen People is that it was always a very large magazine, and I still have a couple of old issues, and it is by far the one with the most content. And I appreciate that. Third category is, of course, fashion magazines. This was a very important category to me, especially as I left high school and went into college. I kind of moved away from YM and 17 and magazines like that, and I started reading magazines like Elle and, I don't know, Allure. Vogue and like Harper's Bazaar always felt a little too mature, a little too luxury for me. I was not buying anything on the pages of Vogue, let's be real. But obviously, for all of the young adults that lived through the Hills era, the top of the top, the pinnacle of fashion magazines was Teen Vogue. Unlike Vogue, I feel like it was actually pretty accessible for teenagers. Not necessarily that they offered affordable items as their product suggestions, but at least the looks were things that I could picture myself wearing and recreating. And they also had a lot of celebrity tie-ins, so they would have celebrities on the cover and they would do, stories about them and kind of their real lives. And it was just so great. And obviously, the fact that Lauren fake worked there on the Hills made it a favorite for our entire generation. Next category is kids magazines, and this one has to go to Nickelodeon magazine. I don't remember Nickelodeon magazine super vividly because I was a child when I read it, and that was a really long time ago, but I remember that I loved it, and I remember having a few different kids magazines that I would read here and there, but Nickelodeon magazine is the only one that I remember having a subscription to. What I do remember about Nickelodeon magazine is that they would have ads for all of the cool Nickelodeon toys that I desperately wanted. So that made it very easy for me to show my parents things that that I wanted them to buy me for birthdays, Christmas, whatever. I would probably just like tear out the ad for GAC or whatever it was and just put it on the fridge, which was very convenient. And then last category is clothing catalogs, which is not really a magazine. It wasn't necessarily a publication for entertainment, but they were very entertaining nonetheless. And my top spot for clothing categories of this era goes to Girlfriends LA, which I feel like is very slept on. Everybody talks about Delia's, a lot of people talk about Alloy, but here's the thing about Girlfriends LA. They had all of the same kinds of clothes as all of those other catalogs, but I feel like their stuff was, one, more fun, and two, way more diverse. They really had something for every kind of kid. They did a lot of different aesthetics, and they were also the only clothing catalog of the time that offered extended sizes, which in the late 90s, I mean, it's still hard to find extended sizes in the year 2023 in a lot of clothing brands, but in the late 90s, it was very, very difficult to find. And now when I look back at a lot of those clothing catalogs, they pretty much all look the same, but there's just something really fun about the Girlfriends LA catalogs. They're very playful. The way that they style the outfits is really fun and playful. And I don't know, there's just something about them. I like it the best. And I don't think I ever ordered from any of these catalogs, at least not clothes. I did order an inflatable chair once, which my cat promptly popped. But I'd like to think that if I was able to order from one of these catalogs now, it would be Girlfriends LA. There were so many great kids magazines that I didn't even get into on this episode, but I will end it there. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy this conversation, I would love it if you would share this episode with somebody else who might also enjoy it. I will be back next week. So until then, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'll see you then. Bye.